Hi everyone, and welcome back to Learning Media Skills, and today we're going to take a look at the basic title tool of DaVinci Resolve, one of the best video editing systems out there, at least in my opinion, and it does come with a wonderful basic title tool that will allow you to make quick titles. For example, in this video project that we're working on here, we have a video called Better to Die Walking, and right at the beginning we have a very basic lower thirds title that shows up to identify the main person of the story. Well, how can we make this title in Resolve? Let's get started. All right, let's find another place in our video where we can reconstruct that lower third. We call it a lower third because usually these titles show up in the lower third portion of the video. But you can just call it a title. That would be fine too. How can we add this title to identify the woman of our story? Well, to find that tool, especially when you're working with just one screen like this, we have to go up to the very top ribbon menu and look for the symbol that has kind of the magic wand here, and that gives us our effects palette. Right now we're showing the panel of our media pool that has all of our bins. If we want to change it to find our effects, including our title tool, we click on this magic wand. And here we see we have a number of tools that show up. Video transitions, audio transitions, and the next one is titles. So let's click on that. There are a number of options that you can start with. You'll notice the first one is the left lower third. We could just drag it down to our timeline and start working with that, and it would give us a good start on our title. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're just going to use the basic title, and we'll drag and drop that right onto our timeline in video track 2. And you'll see that by default it comes with basic title already defined, and it places it right in the center of the video. Now, to be able to change this title to what we want, we have to first of all click on the title, and you'll see that it becomes selected when it has the red border there. And what we need to do now is go up to the top right-hand ribbon icon menu and click on Inspector. That's the little tools that are crossed there. Now, in order to have enough space to use this Inspector tool to make changes to either your title tool or your video clips, when you're working with one screen, it does mean that you have to lose one of your monitors. But don't worry, you can still edit fine with only one monitor and keep your Video Inspector panel open. It's no real problem at all. Let's go back to our bin and open up our B-roll shots, and you'll notice that as soon as we do a double click on one of these B-roll shots, your monitor changes to your preview monitor. And then as soon as you click down in your timeline area, that one monitor changes to your output monitor or your timeline monitor. Double click on a B-roll clip and you're back to using this screen as your preview monitor. So you can still edit this way and keep your Inspector tool panel open. Now, of course, one way to solve this issue is to buy a second monitor and plug that into your computer, and that way you can always have two monitors here, have your Inspector tool open, and this media pool panel, along with all of the effects panels and things like that, will be over on the second view screen that you plug into your computer. It's always best to have two monitors when you're doing video editing. But if you just have a laptop, it's still workable. You can still toggle back and forth between your preview monitor and your output monitor, just depending on what area you've got your focus. When you focus in on the timeline, that's what the monitor is going to do. When you go back to inspecting the clips that you might want to bring in, then you've got your preview monitor. All right, with that explanation, let's get back to our title tool. We want to create this title here, and how do we do that? Well, you'll see that now that we have our Inspector tool open and we've got our title selected, we'll see that the title is showing up here. If we go in here and change this, let's change this to the woman's name, Alogita Ekal. All right, and once you've got it typed in, You can make changes to that title in the way of fonts and color and size. Let's just do some of that. Let's highlight the basic title. And first of all, let's change the color. Let's double click on this little color icon here, and you'll see way down in the left bottom corner, a color wheel pops up. And just by taking your mouse to the very center, you can select, as you bring it around and move this around, you can choose any color of the rainbow that you want. And I like to have kind of a dark yellowish orange for the person's name, and so we'll go with that. After you've got a color that you're happy with, you have to hit OK. Now, if you're going to be using this color a lot, and you want to be consistent in that color that you want, you can drag and drop the color into one of your preferences here. And the next time that you want to use that color, rather than search for it with your mouse, you can just click the preferred color that you've defined and it will be selected. Then we hit OK. Now my client has a preferred font that they like to have on all of their video titles, and so we need to find that. It's Montserrat. And let's see what our options here are for bold. We've got light, extra light. Well, those are a little hard to read, so I think we're going to have to stay with bold. And I think we'll just bump up the size a little bit, something like that. And a lot of these settings are quite intuitive. If you're doing a lot of text, like a quote or something, you can choose whether that's going to be left justified, centered, right justified. You can choose where your anchor is going to be. Here's a position tool. Let's bring it over for our purposes. Now, in addition to our size tool here, you can also zoom in with this tool as well. You can, of course, rotate it. So there's lots of options here. Let's add a second line. Let's go back up here, hit return, and let's add a little bit more about her. She is a, what did we say? An ADRA brace participant. Okay, so let's add that as a second line. And by default, it picks up the definitions that we've already made for the first line, but we can easily change that. First of all, we probably want to make that a different color so that her name stands out a little bit. So let's make that white. And let's maybe change it from bold to, let's go with regular. And then let's resize it. And that looks pretty good. However, it's still a little hard to read because of the background image. And so sometimes you need to make a few changes in the background to make your title more readable by your viewing audience. And this quick title tool has some options that you can apply to this. For example, you could, if you wanted to, add a drop shadow. By default, it's already on, but because the settings are set to 0, we don't see anything. So if you want to add some drop shadow, you just need to change this a little bit. And right now, the opacity is at 75%, so it's quite dark. We can scale that back, and we can add a little blur to it, just like you do with your Photoshop tools. However, even though her name is now a little bit more readable, the lower line is still a little bit difficult to read over that straw house of hers, or stick house, I guess it is, mud and stick. So maybe we need to darken the background just behind the title. And again, it's already on by default, but in order to see it, we need to change the height. Right now, because the height is at 0, we're not seeing anything. So let's change our height to make it larger than the title itself. Now it's too wide right now. It's covering her face. We don't want that. So let's bring down the width. And it's not really centered in the backdrop area there. And so let's go down to where it says center here, and just let's bring this up a little bit so that it's got the same amount of space at the top as it does at the bottom. We can adjust the amount of curvature we want. We could have it completely square at the corners, or we can add a little bit of soft curves to the corner which I think I prefer. And we can adjust the opacity of the background itself. And if you'd like to have a little bit more definition to your backdrop, you can do that by adding an outline to it. And first of all, let's change the color of the outline color. Let's maybe use the same color that we used for her name. Now we still don't see anything, and that's because our outline width is at 0. So let's bring that up a little bit, and now we start to see a little bit more definition to the edges of our background, which you might find nice. I think I'll just keep it off for now, but good to know that that has an option. And now that we're finished with the title, how can we get it positioned to where we want? It's a little bit too high. If you're calling this a lower third, it's just a little bit high to be a lower third, isn't it? Resolve has a way to handle that so that we're adjusting or moving the whole set, the background, her name, and her title at the same time. And you do that by going over to Settings. And now, when you use the position tools like Zoom, you're adjusting the whole set, not just her name or not just the background. You're adjusting the whole set, which I think is great. You can position it over in either direction horizontally as well as vertically. And so we'll bring it down about here. It's still quite large, and so we can just maybe pull back on the zoom a little bit, and there we go. Of course, there's lots of funky tools that you want here. You can rotate it if you want. You can do pitch and yaw for those crazy TV commercials. DaVinci allows you to do all sorts of things like that. And once you're happy with the title, you might not want to have it just pop on like that. That can be a little bit harsh. Let's expand this out. And notice how you can very easily add a fade on just by clicking on the title itself, grabbing the corner here and just sliding that across, and we'll maybe do the same to the other end. And now when we play it, it's going to fade on instead of pop on. All right, well, there you have it, how to make a title in Resolve. And if you found the lesson helpful, go ahead and give it a like. And if you haven't already done so, I invite you to subscribe to our channel to get more quick tips like this on DaVinci Resolve in learning media skills. So long for today.